Welcome to the Suited Up Podcast, a podcast that dives into the real, raw stories of some of your favorite former collegiate and professional athletes as they tell their emotional and difficult transition from their athletic career into the business world. And I'm your host, Scott Radcliff. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening. This podcast, this episode, I'm pretty excited about. I got one of my good friends, former teammates, here with us in the studio, Doug Beaumont.
Hey, how's it going, man?
That's good, dude.
It's going good.
It's good, man. So a little bit about Doug, and I'll let you tell most of it, but Doug grew up here in Louisville, played for Male, was a stud standout, football player, basketball. Of course, I know that as well, which is, I never really saw much of your basketball career, but from people that around the city that, oh yeah, Doug, he was the man in basketball. Did you win? You didn't win Mr. Basketball, did you?
No, I was considered runner-up.
Runner-up.
So.
And then what about football? Did you?
I won Mr. Football.
So you were, okay, you all, Mr. Football, and then I guess runner-up of Mr. Basketball.
Yes.
That's wild. And then if you don't know Doug either, it's probably even crazier because how tall are you? Am I taller than you?
I don't know. I'm 5'8". You might be 5'9".
You're 5'8"? Yeah. I am tall. I mean, I like to say 5'10", like to round up.
It's in the book, it definitely says 5'10" for me.
Yeah, it's like 5. I'm like, might be 6 foot on there. I didn't know that. I mean, I guess I never really stood next to you in comparison. We're both small, so it's when you're small compared to people that are 6'2", 6'3", but.
Got that big head. I think my helmet was a little bit taller than yours.
Oh, okay. So, clearly talented. Did you run track?
To get more interaction with Tennessee, but it kind of faded towards the end just because I was really focused on wanting to go to Louisville. So those were the ones. South Carolina was the other one. But once I committed, they kind of fell off as well. And the reason why with Louisville, I mean, you just look at the history just with their winning so much at that time.
Yeah.
I came out during the Orange Bowl year, and the biggest thing that stood out to me was they were winning with players in Louisville.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those things you watch. You was watching Chris Remy, you was watching Avin Green, but all the way leading up to Michael Bush and Brian Brom, and just watching how great their careers were here, being in their hometown, being in front of people. For me, that's something that stuck out. I wanted my family to attend the games, and then also, just being able to say, hey, that's Doug Beaumont. He went to Male. He plays for Louisville, kind of have that legacy.
Yeah.
And, that's why I chose Louisville. I mean, it was. And then with that, you see Petrino and they're scoring 70 points a game. It's like, well, I want to be a part of that.
I want to play that. Yeah.
So, yeah, that was also a plus to have. At the time, thinking, yes, I'm going to play for that offense. And then all that stuff happened.
Plans changed and stuff like that. Coaching staff changed, and which I was a part of the Craig Thorpe era for 1 year and then and whatnot. And then we got strong. So, you had three head coaches? Petrino left before you got there?
Committed to Petrino. I always want to make it clear. I did commit to Petrino.
Yeah.
And then Coach K came in.
Okay.
And the first thing he did, him and Coach Nora came to my basketball practice and just sat me down and was just like, hey, we want you at Louisville. We think you'll be a fantastic player. And then if you think about it, everybody was coming back. Brian Brom at the time was like, hey, I'm going to end up coming back. Basically the whole offense, you had Mario, Harry Douglas, Gary Barnidge, Eric Wood, all these NFL players. Yeah. And it's like, well, shoot, I got a good chance of going to the league. So, not even going to the league, but winning a national championship under these guys. So for me, I was like, yes, I definitely want to come back and be a part of this. So when I did, it was 3 years of Craig Thorpe. And unfortunately, we had adversity. Coach K is a great coach. But I just think, his timing coming in with Petrino players and things like that, it definitely played a part. Trust is a big factor. I think in the beginning there was a couple of things that happened that a lot of guys lost their trust, and it kind of showed over the time with the years. So had him for 3 years, and then I got Coach Strong for 1 year, and it was kind of the stepping stone to the next thing. Yeah,
that year was pivotal when getting us to the year where it was my senior year when we played in the Sugar Bowl. Like your senior year was like the core group of guys that dug and fought hard. You were just digging and just building that foundation, and that's what really set us up for success. 2-3 years down the road.
We knew that it was one of those things where Coach Strong had our back. You could tell from the get-go. Everybody saw it. As soon as he came in, You know, he brought in Coach Moore, like, hey, we're going to get after it. He's in the locker room.
Dudes were passing out, throwing up in the first workout. Like, it was like leg day, first workout.
Absolutely.
Dudes were passing out in the squat rack. Like,
and it was like, okay, this is going to be different. You could tell the morale was going to be different. And then along with that, he was bringing in this great class. You know, we're out here like, I mean, at first I was like, am I going to lose my starting spot? Like, I was like Michael Lee Harris and Josh Bellamy coming in, and it was just like, I'm going to have to compete. And that was something where, you know, he really got the attitudes of everybody, like everybody wants to work hard. And I think it carried over into the football games. And even though the record didn't show, but we knew that was kind of the turning point.
Yep.
And you guys was going to carry it on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, the record, we were at 7-6. We
7-6.
won the Beefo Brady's Bowl that year. That was fun. And excited for you all because that was the only bowl that you all went to, right? Or did you go on your freshman year?
No, it was the only bowl we went to. So, like, I mean, can I borrow some gifts? I mean, it was like I got all the gifts, and I was sitting here like I got one-time gifts.
Yeah, I got for the Sugar Bowl. I got a recliner, like a nice, like $1,000 recliner, but I never had anywhere to put it, so it's still my mom's basement. So I got this really sweet gift. I got nowhere to put it for like my whole life. So it's been 10 years. But no, man, you hit on one thing, and then we'll move on. But you talk about local players and stuff like that. The only thing I will say about Louisville right now is I hope that they continue to recruit local talent because, you know, it means just a little bit more to when you play for your hometown. And of course, you're not going to speak on that. And when you have those guys who really just bleed, you know, the city, it's their city, and you've got other guys that can buy in, that come from outside the city, and I mean, I think that's a huge piece that Louisville specifically needs to have and continue to have.
No, I definitely agree. I think it's more personable to those local players, and it speaks, you know, through them as they're going against, say, the UK, or just in general, like, hey, this name across your chest, this is my city.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where you have to, you know, you want to play for that name across your chest. Yep. And that's something that I did throughout the 4 years, even though it was ups and downs. I mean, I think that's what we continuously need because it kind of brings the group together to then want to go out and win. You
did, man. Absolutely. I want to harp on, like, the people that either are listening that don't know you or the ones, even if they did, the fans that listen and then recognize your name and all that stuff. Like, they saw what you did on game day, year in and year out. Like, you were as consistent as anybody, but you did. I mean, you were on every special team. I mean, getting tackles on kickoff and punt and all these things. But, I mean, you were absolutely one of the hardest workers on the team, and you were one of the best players. Like Coach Strong used to always say. And, you know, I know you probably joke with some buddies now. And I know you too. You probably at the time didn't necessarily like all the spotlight that he was trying to give you, but he was really trying to send a message. And I understood it, but he was like, just give me 22 Beaumonts. I need 11 on the offense, 11 on defense, and we'll figure out special teams, but I need 22 Doug Beaumonts.
No.
You know, and once again, you're 5'8", but it didn't matter, man. Like, you always got it done. I mean, yes, you're athletic, you know, with all get out, but, I mean, you were a technician. And I always talk about, when I'm talking about you, is like one-on-ones. Like, for those who don't know what one-on-ones is, it's a period in practice where a receiver goes against a DB, and most really talented receivers will win, you know, let's just say 75% of those, because the DB is going to get a few here and there, or like even a lot of times, like, you may get such a good release that it puts the DB in, you beat him so bad on your initial, like, juke move or, you know, outside step to get inside, that when you finally start to release downfield, they're in your way, and they just win that way, right? But I cannot remember a time. I'm sure there was at least one, but I honestly cannot remember one time you did not catch a ball in one-on-ones. And it was not. I mean, once again, you were athletic, but you were an absolute technician.
No, I appreciate that, and that's something, you know, I took pride in because, like you said, I am 5'8". So for me, how can I stand out? I can't be like a Josh Chichester and, you know, be taller in a corner and over, like, kind of jump over them. I had to do it at the beginning of my routes, like in the one-on-ones, whether it was through quick feet, understanding, you know, who I was going against, leverage, all that. I think the only person I would say that was very competitive with me in one-on-ones was Johnny Patrick. And obviously he went, you know, third round in the draft. So it was like, that was the one person that I would say, usually gave me a competitiveness. But other than that, I mean,
You
not
still
to
caught
brag,
the ball, though.
but I
every time.
still,
They'd be
it
all
still
over you.
was.
You'd still catch it.
I was always, I took pride in that. I always making sure that if anything, I'm gonna catch the ball. I might mess up on the route, but I'm gonna catch the ball. I do want to bring up though, because when you talked about the Coach Strong thing, what people don't realize is like my senior year, I did get hurt. I got hurt after the Oregon State game, tore my meniscus. And, when I went into the training room on Monday, they were like, hey, Doug, it is torn. We're going to have to do surgery. Well, with that is typically a like 4 to 8 week injury. I came back in 2 weeks to play, against Cincinnati. So I think, when Coach Strong brought that up, it was after, 4 days after my injury, I was out training on the sideline and I was doing quick feet and doing drills. And Coach Strong was just like, you already out here?
Yeah.
Man, we need more people like this. And that's where it kind of was just like, we need about 10 Doug Beaumont. Yeah. And, to this day, like you said, we laugh and giggle, but that's kind of where it came from because he just saw my work ethic, even, going back to the
We all did, man. We absolutely all did.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to be behind you and play the same position as you. I would literally watch, of course, my film, which at the time there wasn't very much of, because I was more on the, second, third string or whatever, watching and just trying to learn. But I would literally watch your one-on-ones. I would watch when we would watch, specific plays. I would watch you from the smallest detail. I'm like, okay, when he breaks this way or does this release, like where's his shoulders? Like where's his head? Where's his weight? Like, because you were a technician, but the effort you put in was endless, and I think that's why you were so well respected, not only by the coaching staff, but our players as well.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I will say I commend you for that because, when I did get hurt, people had to step up. And you were one of them. I remember when we went down to Arkansas State and I feel like everybody got hurt. And you probably read at least like 60 to 70 plays. And it was just like nonstop going. But you stayed out there. You continued to, get open, make plays. And, I commend you for that because I know it was tough. At times I was like, Scotty, you just get some water. Like you're about to go back in. Like it was just nonstop that game. But you definitely stepped up when it was needed.
No, I appreciate that, man. And a funny story about that is, because you were out, we had a few other people out, and we traveled, so we didn't have like our full, plethora of receivers, right? And so then someone else got hurt, so I'm playing more, and it was at one point, I think the whole second half, it was just me and Josh Bellamy.
Yeah, that was it.
And Josh fell down like the goal line on a post route, and he was laying on the ground. I was 20 yards away from him. I ran over because he was laying on his back, and I was like, I pulled him up. I said, you got to get up. I said, and no offense to my man, I'm gonna give him a shout out, Aaron Nance, because he was more of a special teams guy. He traveled, but Aaron, he just got hurt. He was a walk on. He didn't really know much of the playbook. So I grabbed Bellamy. I said, you got to play because the next person is the only person left is Aaron Nance, and he's a true freshman walk on that doesn't know much of the play calls. So I was like, you got to get up. You got to get up. It's just me and you right now. You can't leave me alone.
And I even think Aaron was still like healing from his hands. Remember his hands?
He had broken hands. So that was the only receiver besides me. If Belly went down, and that would not, I think we barely won that game, but it would have been ugly. It would have been ugly.
I think we lost to Arkansas. I mean, we wouldn't have been bowl eligible. So think about it. So like I said, it's one of those things where the next man up, and you definitely took that and ran with it. So
it was, and once again, we can harp on back and forth our brotherly love, but man, I got a lot for you, and I was able to do what I did because of guys like you, Trent Guy, Scott Long, all those guys that were ahead of me that you all reached down and taught me so much. But let's talk about spin a little bit because we talked about why you chose Louisville and stuff like that. But let's take a little bit step back, real quick, and just what was your childhood like? I didn't know you until college, so what did you do growing up? That kind of stuff.
No, absolutely. So for me, I was always into sports. I was one of those kids that was like, hey, when in say the summertime, not during school, I was outside all day. It was one of those like, hey, let's go play kickball, let's go play basketball, let's do something. I grew up most of the time. I'm from Westport, grew up in Westport Road, but a lot of times there's a small neighborhood, majority black neighborhood called Berrytown, where my mother and them grew up, and she always just took me over there. It was a bunch of neighborhood kids that we always just got together, and it was one of those things where we knew we was just outside all day. And then when you see the light come on at the post, it was like, all right, time to go in. It's getting dark. But that was just kind of the way we grew up. I was also just a religious person. My mom made sure we went to church every Sunday. I did Bible study. I always wanted to make sure that one of the big things that my mom taught me was, hey, the reason why you have this talent to play sports is because of the Lord. So that was something that always stuck with me. Over time, I became a big person within FCA. I always tell people, the way you see FCA now on Louisville's campus, we had 10 people in a position room at one point.
Wow.
It's unbelievable just to see what Chris Morgan has done, and he started with us and then has made it even huge. But going back to childhood, yeah, that was just something. And then on top of that, if I wasn't playing outside, I was playing in a league in a sport. What people don't know is at one point I was playing up to 5 leagues. So I was playing basketball, football, baseball, ran track, and I was in a bowling league. So
you are good at bowling. I remember we went bowling a couple of times.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I have my own bowling ball. I grew. I even got better and I could tell you that story later when it was going through the NFL process. But I got better at bowling. But yeah, that was something as a childhood that's continued to grow. But with that, I had both parents in my life, my mom and dad. My dad was a hard worker. He was a, great individual who just worked hard. So for the most part, whenever he can get overtime, he always made sure he just got that because he knew like once he brought the, paycheck home, things like that, it's like, hey, Doug, what do you need? Okay, you need a new bat for baseball? I'm going to go get you a bat. Or you need some new shoes for basketball? I'm going to get you some shoes. So that was one thing that, looking up to my parents, it was just, my mom, she would travel anywhere for me. There was one time we played at Mail. I played basketball game Friday night. She drove to New Orleans so I can play AAU basketball that night in the morning time. So it was just, there's stuff like that you're just like, I'm blessed to have the parents that I have. So, with that, that's kind of just my childhood. But, I went through some obstacles, but it wasn't anything that was just like out of ordinary. So I can say I'm blessed for it.
Absolutely, man. I think being understanding and humbled, now I've got kids, and you're talking about your schedule and playing 5 sports at one time, and my kids are younger still, so I haven't done this, but I'm talking to parents that do have older kids, and I hear their schedule about taking them from sport to sport, and I'm like, that's your life. And it was, clearly with you especially, it was that was probably all your mom was wrapped up in, like your dad's making sure, the money was there to support that as well. So, definitely a big shout out to your parents for not only getting you involved in all that stuff, but clearly they've raised you right in so many ways to, like I said, I know you're a great friend. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Big shout out to them.
And even with that, it's like my sister, I had a sister and, she, I ain't gonna say I have a sister. Let me rephrase that. Okay. Yeah. And she was in dance. So like if I wasn't playing sports, I was doing dance. I was at a dance recital, or like she ran track too as well. Yep. So we was doing AAU track, traveling around for that. She was a Lady Bird for U of L as well. So it was like my parents went through it where she saw a Lady Bird for so long and then football player for so long. Nice. So it's just constant with that. And what people don't know is like my senior year, my parents went to every football game, no matter what. They were in Oregon State. Mm-hmm. They were in New York. They had Thanksgiving when we played Rutgers. Yeah. They was at every game. And it was just, not many people can say they have that in their life.
You're right, man. You're right. Well, man, let's pivot a bit now and I appreciate you sharing all of that about the childhood, and I love hearing the stories about, at U of L and all that stuff. We could talk for hours about stories about all of that. But at some point, you graduate, you won the Beef O'Brady's Bowl, and then from there it's like, all right, what's next? And you were talented enough, you had enough things go on, and to where you had the ability to have an opportunity to go try and play at the NFL. So I don't know much about this. I'm excited to hear a lot of this part, because although we've been in contact and we hang out and play in flag football leagues together, we don't really get too much of an opportunity to talk about this. So Doug, what was your process like trying to make it to the NFL and all of that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was like between then, what people don't, I came out during the strike year. So for me, it was definitely one of those things where, it was kind of the unknown. You didn't know what was going to happen. And really, they didn't announce it until after the draft, or like draft day that, hey, we're going on strike. So once the bowl game was over, at the time, it was just like, all right, what's next step? As I said before, I got injured my senior year. So like I really wasn't getting Like not many scouts was reaching out, not many agents was reaching out.
When you played, you looked like RoboCop. Like you see what Gronk's wearing.
Yes.
You had the big shoulder elbow pad. You had a knee
I had
brace.
a
I mean,
knee
you looked
brace.
like what Gronk looks like.
I was like a walking Don Joy at one point. Like it was getting kind of different, like kind of weird, like the way I was just walking around.
And you were still getting it done.
And I was still trying to get it done. So that's what, when that happened, it was just like, all right, one, I need to get healthy.
Yep.
My knee probably still was only probably 70%. Back then as, with players, like you can take supplements or things like that to try to help yourself to go get through a game. We took shots, things like, and, a lot of people don't know, like the athletes, your body takes a beating.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times they just give you something to numb it just for the game.
It doesn't heal it.
It doesn't heal.
You just don't feel
it during the game.
Until the
Yes.
night. Yeah.
So like once everything wore down, I was hurt. So with that, I was able to speak with a couple agents. My agents were Sean Freibert. You probably know him.
Yeah, he's a great dude.
So it was him, and then I don't know, my mind just went blank. Sorry. But anyways, they got me into like a sports facility. Well, for me, what I looked at was like, hey, I want to focus on the draft, and then, if it didn't work out, I'll come back to school. Because one thing with school, we went through a lot of adversity at the time at U of L. We was under one advisor for 3 years. So think about one advisor, looking at 118 players to get them through like school. It wasn't going to work. Yeah. Like now you see Justin Ruffin and he has a whole team.
Yeah.
And you can graduate in 3.5 years. For me, I didn't get to that point. I looked up, I had taken 12 hours of Pan-African studies, which is not even needed for the business school. So it was just something that I knew I had to complete school, but I kind of wanted to focus on the draft. Well, Coach Strong calls me in with my mom and is like, hey, we need to talk. Well, it was kind of like tough, but he kind of gave me that tough conversation of like, hey, Doug, you need to stay in Louisville. You need to focus on your school. You need to go back to school. And the draft will come later. Like not everybody your size goes to the draft. So it kind of was a lump in my throat, but It was kind of a realistic conversation. Looking back now, like not a lot of people know about that conversation, but it helped me grow. I mean, it helped me grow. It helped me become the person I am today. And with that, it also gave me motivation. Like, hey, in a sense, I want to prove Coach Strong wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, he gave the right advice. But it was one of those things where I felt like at the moment, like, oh, no, you're wrong. Like, I'm definitely going to do well, whatever it might be. So with that, I ended up staying in Louisville. So at the time I was training, and then also going to school. But from a personal standpoint, it was a lot going on. During that time, I had a girlfriend in college.
Yep.
She broke up with me over the Christmas break. So it was like I dealt with a breakup over Christmas break. My mom had to have double hip replacements. So then she went through that. During that time, my grandpa, who ended up passing away later, like around Christmas, they said he didn't have much time to live. So I was like, from a mental, standpoint, it was just, I was like, how am I going to get through this? And on top of that, I'm trying to focus on trying to go to the league. Yeah. Like it was a lot on the plate. So, fast forward, I got around 4 months, the draft happens. My agent saying, hey, Doug, you have a chance to potentially go anywhere from 6th to 7th round. They was talking to me like, hey, San Francisco might pick you up because you have the punt return abilities. Well, I look up around 6th round, they pick up like somebody from Stanford as a punt returner. So I'm just like, there went my chance. So then the draft is over and it was just like, all right, what happened? It was like, well, it's a strike. So they'll pick back up in June. And this was back in March, April, when the draft is. Yeah. So here I am now, April, no job, just finishing up school because it's like, U of L finishes up around end of April, things like that. And I don't know what to do, not much money to have. I mean, I didn't have much money. And so like with that, luckily I had a good support system. They was like, hey, Doug, come out. It was like one of the first night races at Churchill Downs. So I was like, let me just go out. So it was just nice just to get out the house, things like that. Well, after that, I was like, well, I got to do something else. So with that, my trainer actually allowed me to train kids while I train. So he's like, hey, I'm going to give you a discount. You can train kids while you train, come out. And like, that gave me hope. It's like, oh, I'm, instilling my mind into these kids, my skill sets. So I just was able to do that over the months. And then with that, also I had a couple friends who's like, Doug, I know you play bowl, you used to bowl, this and that. Come bowling. So next thing you know, I got into bowling.
Yeah.
And it became a hustle. Over time, I was making money bowling because I got so good at it. A guy like, hey, Doug, I got a bowling ball for you, $40. All you got to do is learn to make it curve. I picked it up. And next thing you know, I'm bowling, like I'm averaging 220. And it's like, I'm just like collecting money. We was going like 3 times a week. It was to a point where some of my friends like, I can't bowl with you, Doug. Like, you're winning too much. I don't have money to keep. So that kind of got me through it. And then, June comes around and, I'm actually bowling that night. And it was like, hey, we're about to start back up. So I'm sitting here bowling. I haven't heard anything all day. Nobody's called me. Nobody's, sent me anything. My agent hasn't heard anything. Next thing you know, I look down at my phone. I'm getting a call from Atlanta, Georgia area code. So I'm just like, oh.
Okay.
So I was like, hey, guys, I'm going to walk over here. So then.
And you're in the bowling alley, you said?
I'm in the bowling alley. So like.
The worst place to have a conversation.
It was awful. It was loud. You hear the pins.
Bang.
I'm like, hello? I was like, hey, is this Doug Bowling? I was like, yeah. He's like, hey, we just feel like you can be an attribute to our team. With the strike, we got to fill the roster. We would like to offer you a spot for our training camp. So I was like, yeah. Thank you, this and that, blah, blah. So with that, next thing you know, it's just like, all right, I'm going to Atlanta.
That's awesome.
So that's kind of just, that the whole situation, like looking back, it was like, it was a low point in my life.
Yeah.
But over time, it gave me things that, hey, nowadays it's like, okay, I needed to go through that to come out on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. Was Harry there when you were?
So that's the thing. So what I didn't know.
Harry Douglas for the listeners out there.
Yes, Harry Douglas. So what I didn't know so it was pretty cool though, is one, I get to call Atlanta. Next thing you know, I get a text, Froman. Hey, Doug, I heard you going to Atlanta. I just got picked up by Atlanta too.
Oh, no way.
I'm like, what? I was like, oh, we're both going to the same camp. So here we are. We drive down in it. You remember his big white truck? We drive down in his big white truck 5 hours down here. His truck was just like very country. So I'm like,
oh, yeah, he's country.
Seats getting hot. Like, come on, man. Like, but we drive down there, get there. And then you look up, what I didn't realize was, there's a lot of good players on this team. I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah. At that time, Julio Jones just got drafted first round, 4th pick.
Oh, man.
Harry Douglas is good. They had Roddy White, who was in his prime still. Yeah. And then they had a Hall of Famer. Tony Gonzalez was the tight end.
Yeah.
And just last year, their punt returner was a Pro Bowler. So I was just like, all right, well, how am I going to make this team?
That's a ton of stuff.
So it's just, what I would tell anybody who's going to the league as a free agent, looking back, the biggest mistake I did was I went into the camp trying to make it as a receiver. I should have never tried to make it a receiver. I should have went into camp trying to make it just as a special teams player.
Yeah.
And that was something, I didn't really have, I didn't reach out or talk to anybody to tell me like, Doug, don't even think about it. And then during the strike, you really don't know because I didn't get to go through, mini camp, OTAs, anything like that. So for me, I was like, all right, I got to learn this playbook. I got to become a receiver, things like that. Even with that, Chris Redmond was the backup quarterback at the time. So here I am. I got Froman. I got Chris Redmond.
Man,
so it was definitely just like I had the people around me, but at the same time, it was like it was tough because I didn't think about it from a special teams. I was like, hey, I need to make a receiver. So with that, went through camp, got all the way to the last week of training camp, and then I got a phone call that they were going to release me. At that time, they were like, hey, we just feel like we need taller receivers to back up our players, and again, size came up in a situation, but it happened.
Because how many preseason games did you play in? You play them all?
So I played in 3 preseason games. I was headed to the 4th game, and then that's when I made the phone call.
Because I remember, of course, watching and rooting for you and all that kind of. Because I was okay. He made it another week.
Yes.
Because we don't have much contact during these times and whatnot. I'm just like watching you on TV. So I turn on the game. I'm like getting on. I mean, like Twitter, I guess, was kind of around at that point. It was kind of around. I probably wasn't on Twitter, but finding anywhere I could find like an update about you, what's going on. Then I turn on the game. I'm like, okay, he's there. Okay, he's still there. And then, unfortunately, I guess it didn't work out. But you said it. You said later or earlier. You said Coach Strong was right. He's like, oh, and he said I should have done this. He was right. Yeah, maybe, but don't discount and discredit what you did, because the NFL is a lot of the being in the right perfect fit, the right opportunity at the exact right time. Like, you see some of those guys that bounced around, didn't make it here, didn't make it there, and then they get a chance or is the perfect fit for the perfect offense, and then they become like damn near Hall of Famers.
Yep.
So who knows if the strike, there's a lot that went against you. The strike happened. That would put you at a huge disadvantage. The scenario backing up, a few, like 4 guys you mentioned on Atlanta's team that are Hall of Famers or damn near close to Hall of Fame if they're not making it in there. So, don't discredit your talent, your efforts, and all that kind of stuff, man. I don't want you here thinking that because in the grand scheme of things, Coach Strong was right in that sense, but there was a lot that the ball didn't bounce your way. But that's life, man, and you've bounced back and stuff like that. I know you've got quite a good resume as well. So, paint the picture of so then you didn't get asked back by Atlanta. Were there any other teams, or did you continue to try after that didn't work out? And then what was it like mentally being like? And were you ever at that point, or when was it when you were like, all right, I'm done?
Yeah. So for me, and just to talk to you, like you said, Charlie and Coach Strong did give that advice, and like you said, I didn't take it personal. Because I knew, like you said, I can overcome so much. And even afterward, my mom was in the room. So it was just like, nah, my baby's going to get there. Like, it was one of those things. So like you said, just being able to get there was enough for me. But when I did get back, I came back to Louisville, and it was kind of one of those things like, all right, I'm going to take a couple weeks off. My agent said, hey, we're just going to fill some things out. Maybe you might get a call here and there. So I made sure I stayed in shape, worked out each day. But it kind of started to sit in because it was kind of getting like week 3, week 4, and I'm just like, I'm not getting back in. And I think for me, like, from a personal standpoint, like all your life, that's what you work to get to, and now you're watching it and it's not there. It was kind of one of those depressing moments. Like, I kind of hit that, tough wall, because the other piece was all my friends who were seniors at that time, like they had moved on. Like Pete Nocta went into coaching.
Yep.
Josh Byron was my roommate. He was, up in Pittsburgh and then just other people that was just doing that. And then you're watching, I'm watching Bilal Powell on Sundays, Johnny Patrick on Sunday. And then I'm watching you guys, and you guys are having success too. So it's like, dang, where am I at? I'm like, this is really tough being in Louisville. Like, being honest, it was tough for me to come to games. Yeah. Like, I had a hard time coming to games because, like, what do I have to show for it? And, like, with that, how can I come to games where, I'm there during the same week as, let's just say, Harry Douglas off week. So here I am, was a part of the team. He's there celebrating, and everybody's like, "Oh, Harry Douglas," and I'm just like, "Yeah, I played last year." Like, hang
on, that's how I feel all the time, though. So I see you out there on the sideline. They show you on the big jumbotron at UL games. Everyone cheers. Man, they show my. This is a small little story, but the other day I took Cooper to the basketball game.
Was it him on the game?
Was that?
Was he on the TV?
Yeah, it was.
Yes,
yeah. So they showed Cooper, and I'm sitting there like in my head, I'm like, it's funny because they show like former players and stuff like that on jumbotrons, like welcome back, and they'll say something like, they would do that, for you, and then like they'd later show me and as just some regular fan, they'd be like, and look at this, fan with his kid, and I'm like, hey, it's me, and like no,
like no, so I get it.
I've been in your shoes.
I get it, and that's what it was hard for me because like you got to think, Louisville has no pro sport, so like you are the pro sport. So when you're there and this is, you're not in the pros or you're not on the team anymore. It's just, it hits you differently. And that's kind of what it was for me. And I kind of went in a slump, but I think what turned around everything for me, and like I said, growing up religious, being a part of FCA, things like that, I get a random text from Chris Morgan saying, hey, Doug, I hear you in town, come by FCA. And like just that, like I went in there, and you know how sometimes like you hear a message or you hear a speech, it's like, are you talking to me? Yeah. Like you felt like it was talking, and that's what it was. It was just like overcoming and just, hey, just keep going. You can continue to spread your wings, things like, and I was like, okay, there's a purpose right there. And then like right after that, one thing is like, I got a call from my agent saying, hey, I know you want to go to the league, but there's arena ball and they want to bring you in. So with that, I was like, oh, that's a great opportunity. So for me, again, not knowing What probably I should have done was just held out and then maybe go through like another pro day and see what happens. But I ended up going the arena route. I went to Chicago, did okay. Got to the end. They had a Pro Bowl 5'8" receiver already there, so they was just like, hey, we're just gonna keep him. Hear the same speech. We need tall receivers outside. So I was like, okay. End up getting released last week again. Come back. I get picked up by Spokane, Washington. So for people, that's far. So like, and the one thing with arena ball is they want to be considered professional, but they don't pay like professional. So it was just like, hey, Doug, we want you to come out here. We can't get you out here, but we want you to try out for a team. So again, being blessed with the parents that I have, they were like, hey, we'll pay for your flight to go try out for it. So they paid for my flight, went out there, made the team. They was like, hey, we want to keep you on, this and that. Well, to find out, the next week was a bye week. So I was like, well, I'm about to be in Spokane for the next 7 months. It's nothing out here. And I'm no family, no friends. So I told my parents, and they were like, well, if you want to come home for the week, you can, and then, you can go back. Find out, I come back, tell everybody I made the team, this and that. Go back out there, walk in Monday. Yeah, Doug, we're going to let you go. We need an extra quarterback, so we're going to let you go.
Oh, man.
So here I am, young kid, because it's still 23 years old, getting this going back and forth. At the time, my parents probably threw out about $2,000 to $2,500 in flights, getting me out there, and then it's just like, hey, I got to come back home. I need another flight back home. Yeah. And it was just like, from there, it was kind of one of those deflating moments of like, I don't think this is for me.
Yeah.
So, moving forward, came back, picked up kind of was like, all right, I need to make some money. So at the time, substitute teaching was a big thing. So I got into substitute teaching side. And then from there was a Louisville team starting up arena.
Yeah.
Did that, ended up getting my 5th concussion.
Yeah.
And that kind of was the moment where it was just like, hey, I need to start thinking about life after football. Even though it's tough.
Yeah.
I need to start thinking about life after football.
Yeah, man. That's tough, man. That's tough to hear. Because I didn't have that route. Mine was much different. So then hearing, like, you're bouncing from one place to the next and a lot of the unknown. Like, for me, at least I knew, like, football wasn't an option anymore. Yeah. Although, I will say, you're part of this story here where that when I started to struggle and I was like, what do I know? All I know is football. I think at this point, you had just probably gotten to the point where you're giving it up, getting out of the arena. Because then I texted you, and I was like, Doug, I need someone to train with. Like, let's do this. You and me, we're gonna go to the NFL. Like, I was like,
I remember that.
We can do this, man. Like, we'll work out in the mornings. We'll do this. We'll do that. And like, honestly, had you said like, yeah, let's do it, we both would have been out there trying.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm kind of happy. Of course, you were like at that point, like, nah, man, I can't. I'd love to, man, but like, I just kind of gave it up. And for me at the time, I was like, no, Doug, like, we got to do this, because that's all I was leaning on you to say, yes, Scott, let's do this. We both can do this together. But then, of course, you were like, man, I'm done. So for me, I did do some workouts with myself, but after a couple in the mornings, I was like, what am I doing? And that's when I had to make
You had to make your decision. No, I get it.
So, yeah, man. So then, okay, then you leave, you decide I'm done. And whatnot. Then, job wise, like now we've got to like really go. That's a career, because before you were just trying to make some money, so you could pursue your dream in the NFL. Now you realize, okay, that's not happening anymore. Like, how is it mentally to be like, all right, I've been putting all this effort my whole life here. What am I gonna do as far as a career goes? Like, what did you do career wise? What jobs did you have, and what connections did you make, and mentally, how was that on you as well?
Yeah, so for me, it was one of those things where I did not take advantage of the networks. And that's something that I'll tell people, and I will talk about it later, but it's just, I wish I turned and looked at the person next to me at our luncheon and been like, hey, what do you do for a living? Hey, can I get a business card? Do you do internships? Like, I wished I did that. But I was so, I think it's kind of an ego problem when you like Mr. Football, you're the best in the state, and then you get on a U of L team and you considered one of the top players on the team. It's like, no, I'm going to the league. So what I looked at was, hey, I think one of the good things was I was like, all right, I'm going to the business school because when I get in the league, I'm going to need to know how to, whether it's manage my money or, hey, start a business, whatever. So I want to have that, kind of the platform to do that. So business school was great. When football was over and now here I am sitting with a business degree, it was like, I have no idea what I want to do. So what helped me, though, is my best friend, who was my best man at my wedding. At the time, he had just got a position at Nabisco, cookies and crackers. Yeah. So he was like, hey, Doug, like, I can get your foot in the door if you want to do that. And I was like, yeah. And then the other piece was like, how do I transition? I wanted to also continue to be around sports, but I didn't want to get into coaching. I knew, I just seen the college lifestyle. I mean, we saw Coach Strong. There was times, he's running at 4:45, come in, do weights with us. And then here I am all day. And then I go to, study hall and I'm leaving at 9 and he's still walking through the stadium. And I'm just like, I don't want a lifestyle like that is tough. And then like you said, it's a 3-year span and then you might be gone. You might be fired. You as an assistant, you can get fired at any time. So I was like, I don't want that lifestyle. So I was trying to figure out what could I do? Well, at the time, Nike had just opened up an outlet. So I was like, I'm going to work my way up in Nike. I want to go up to Oregon. Well, you can't do that from a Nike outlet. Like that's not how it works. So like here I am going in like, I want to be the best cashier there is out there. And it was just it wasn't his plan. Like I found out like when you were not motivated into it, and at the time it was just like, so how much are you paying? Like I need you get $875. I was like, whoa. Wait, two weeks check is $300.
I'm going back to bowling.
But that's how it turns into. I was literally taking money. Like when I was living with a friend, my sister's friend. She allowed me to live in her apartment, and she was just like, "Hey, rent's this $400 a month." Well, my checks aren't even that much, so I told her, I said, "Hey, I will have it. It just won't be at the first of the month."
Yeah.
So there was times I would take like $40, go play cards, make it up to $120, give her $100. I would then, work, get another $200, give that to her, but then take another, go to bowling.
Are you listening to this? Because this is nuts for me to hear.
That was my hustle. It was a real hustle at the time. And, don't get me wrong. If I needed the money, my mom would give me money. But it was just like, at that time, I was like, I got to grow up. I got to try to live on my own. That was kind of my first moment, living out on my own, paying rent. But, with that, I was doing Nike. And then, like I said, my buddy got me into it was Nabisco, but it was considered Mondelez International, like whole company. But I had to start out then as a merchandiser. So he's like, hey, you can work your way up, this and that. So if people don't know what a merchandiser is, it's when you go into stores and, make sure the shelves are stocked, you get orders out onto the floor, things like that. Well, what I say was very eye-opening. This is where it made me realize, like, okay, this isn't going to cut it for me. I remember one day I was in like a Walmart on Poplar Level Road. So it's near campus. And like I said, when you are a Louisville athlete, you're considered like the pro.
Yeah.
So a female walks in and like sees me like stocking shelves. And she like looks at me and is like, oh, you're just a stock boy now. And I was like, oh no, like when you say like you're
like she knew like that's Doug Beaumont.
Yeah, like you're just a stock. And it's like, well, I didn't get paid in college. So sorry, I got to stock shelves to make a living.
There was
right
no
now.
NIL.
There was no NIL. So it was just like
I was talking to Vic about this yesterday. Vic would have made a killing. You would have made a killing.
I wouldn't have made like Lamar Jackson money, but I would have made a good living. Living in college, I probably would have made at least an extra probably $50K a year.
What a blow to the pride!
Yeah, blow to the pride, and from there, it's kind of one of those things where I was like, I don't know if Louisville was for me because from a networking standpoint, I didn't do the networking. I'm sitting here struggling to find a job. My Nike project wasn't working out. Like I'm not going to the headquarters anytime soon.
Fastest cashier in the East Coast. I couldn't do
it. It turned it from cashier to shipping and receiving. And I was like, I can't get enough hangers out. It's just not going to cut it. So after that, there was actually a position open here in Louisville for a full-time role for Nabisco. I bombed the interview. I never had interview experience. From what I heard from other people, which was, I don't even know where I heard it from, was, hey, you tell your answer and you just be quiet and wait on the next question. So I would like answer and I'd be like, and like the manager at the time was like, and what else? And I was just like, oh, and it was just, and I would just stop talking. And so then she interviewed 2 people and like, I didn't hear from her for a couple weeks. Yeah. So I asked my buddy, was just like, hey, can you find out? And, you know, he like laid it to me easy. It was just like, yeah, she just went with the other person. She just felt like you know, kind of just wasn't the best at answering. But he goes, but, you know, I actually have a position. My manager has a position here in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. And I want you to come. If you can, you know, interview well, you can get and if you're serious about, hey, you're done with football, you can get the job. And I was like, you know, I'm done. Like it's at that point. I can't do it much more. I got the concussions. So then I ended up going to Indy. And, you know, with that was probably the best decision because it allowed me to understand, like, mentally get away from Louisville to realize that there's bigger things out there. Because you know, hometown hero. Yeah. Been here my whole life. Everything there. And then it's just like, hey, you're starting to realize, like, you know, there was more that was going on that you probably just need to separate yourself. So end up going to Indianapolis, and, you know, from there it was just, I was there about 2 years, and, you know, it was enough time for me just to see what else is out there. So,
but then after that, man, you've worked, like, Nabisco is a big company, and then you go there, and then you end up going to Texas, or is that the next step?
No, so So it's crazy.
You work for some big time corporations.
Yeah, so I ended up meeting my now wife, not meeting, but rekindle now wife. Like we went to high school together. You know, I realized she was in Louisville. I saw her, you know, back then, slid in the DMs. You know, I was able to get contact with her, and then we grew close. She ended up coming up to Indy with me for the time being, and then we both realized, like, hey, you know, now we do want to come back. I feel like, hey, I'm, you know, more mature. I got a career. You know, I want to come back, but I'm looking for something. Well, at the time, Pete Nocta and a guy, Maurice Mitchell, they were working at this company called Tech Systems, which is a staffing agency. So, you know, for me, I was still kind of, even being at Nabisco, being a sales rep, it still wasn't like fulfilling my needs. Like it wasn't like giving me what you want. I mean, you've been through it. Went through multiple jobs where it's just like.
That didn't fill that void.
It didn't fill that void. It didn't fill that void. And now, you know, going up there, like, hey, I got to experience Louisville playing in the Final Four. I got to see, not even Final Four, but like a couple times in the tournament. You know, that was cool. But then it was just like, I want to be home. Now I'm ready to come back. Yeah. And so then they got me a job at Tech Systems. And that kind of was one of those things where, if you don't know about Tech Systems, it's like a staffing agency that focuses on tech. So it hires all types of tech employees, from software engineers, you know, help desk users, project managers, whatever it might be. Yeah. So coming back and being able to get that job where I can help people, I knew that was something that I took pride in. And on top of that, being able to make money from it, it made me like want to flourish in it and grow and be pretty good at it. So that was something that, you know, I came back to do. And I did that for about 3.5 years, which was great because, one, I got to be around family. You know, my family now sees me, hey, with money, like I'm not broke as much. And then on top of that, I got to build, it allowed me to, like, you know, get a ring for my wife. You know, it was all those different things that, you know, I really took pride in. Yeah. And that's what it just grew. But, you know, after that, it still was just like, you know, you start to see the same things in Louisville. So I kind of need, I feel like Louisville and we have this relationship where it's like we have the love, and then it's like, all right, I need to let you go. Yeah. But it was one of those things where I was still young. I was 26 years old, and I knew you know, I was still going out, and it was like, oh, the same people's at the bar. So it was just like, you know how it goes. And I was like, okay, I need to figure out another opportunity. So then I moved to Texas.
So then, you know, you moved to Texas. You worked for, correct me if I'm wrong, it was Google first?
Yes.
because we'll dive into this in a second, but I want to make sure I at least note it now. Is I want to ask, how you for the former or the current athletes there or the former athletes there, like you worked for Google. Who else?
I worked for Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and now Facebook.
Think about that. Those are the companies.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you go to Texas to work for Google, and how was that? And what was the position? And how did that kind of help fill the void a bit more?
Yeah. So it was one of those things. I think, when you are a football player, you feel like you're on top of the earth. Like you feel like you're above. You're in a certain status. Like you might be VIP at a bar, or hey, everybody knows you. Things. And for me, it was like when I was working at Tech Systems, it was great. But like when I talked about Tech Systems, it wasn't like people were like, "Oh, Tech Systems." A lot of times it was like Tech Systems, like what is that? So even though Tech Systems gave me a lot of skill sets, and I still to this day have great friends from there. I still wanted kind of that feel good when you mention it. Like
when you say, "Hey, I work for Facebook," I'm like, "You work for Facebook?"
Yes, that's kind of what I was looking for. Because when you're a player and you're like, "Yeah, I'm my name's Doug Beaumont. I'm a University of Louisville football player." They're like, "Oh, you play football?"
Yeah.
Like people's face light up. So having that moment, I remember when Google reached out. They was like, "Hey, we're looking for recruiters." Like that's something that's really big, especially in the athletic world. You tend to see a lot because it brings that competitiveness. You kind of want to work hard to find people, and it just allows you to bring the skill sets that you learn from the football or whatever sport you're part of.
We say football, that's what we know.
I know that's what we know, and it's just over to that kind of type of field. But the big thing with Google was when I went down there, they was like, "Hey, we want you to come down. We're going to pay you well, this and that. But you have to start out as a contractor." So for me, it was taking a leap of faith. Yeah. And at the time I was like, I don't know. And then,
I'm finally making good money.
I know, right? And it's just my wife was like, "Doug, this is a stepping stone. We're not just looking at this opportunity, this moment as hey, it's more than just right now. This is your career. So why don't you set yourself up?" And, to this day, I love her for that because, she was also going to school. She was about to start her master's program at Spalding at the time. And she was like, "Hey, I'll put that on hold for you to build your career." And, I can't thank her enough because I wouldn't be where I was today without her. So went down there on contract, basically they gave me the offer. My wife and I went down there on a weekend, signed a lease, moved in a week and a half. It was that quick. Man. We got a U-Haul, put her car in the back of the U-Haul. Her dad helped us drive it down. I'm behind her in my truck at the time, and we're with my parents, and we're just driving 15 hours to Austin, Texas. So it's just one of those things wow. And then we get down there, being a part of Google. I mean, it's Google. It's Google. If anybody's ever seen The Internship, the movie, that's what the Google office looks like. Yeah, we didn't have a slide, but when I say at the beginning, I walk in and they're like, "Hey, we're going to breakfast." I was like, "Breakfast?" You go upstairs, it's I
gotta get to work.
I know. Yeah. And I was like, "Don't we have to work?" Or they was like, "No, we're going to breakfast. Take your time." And they were all about that. I'm walking up, pound of bacon, eggs, potatoes, omelet station, bagels, fruit. What? I'm just like, I'm gonna gain weight. I'm about to this is good. But you didn't have to. I could eat fruit one day, or I can eat. Yeah. But I'm a bacon guy, so it's just it
was over with.
It was just awful. And then you go down to your floor. So there was probably 5 floors at Google, and on each floor there's a kitchen. So you walk into your kitchen and it's from top to bottom, Gatorade, Coke, Sprite, Chico, whatever you want in there, coffee, cold brew, hot brew, espresso machine. And then you pull out drawers and it's potato chips, granola bars.
That's interesting to hear, man, because it's somewhat, not to the extreme. Well, nowadays they've got that stuff, but it's very similar to one of the things that I know I missed was having access to all these great luscious items. We flew basically private planes, and we had Gatorade dispensers and free everything when we played. You have apparel, and then you don't have that anymore.
You don't have it.
But I'm sure that's quite a good feature, to go to somewhere, have a career where it's like, oh, I still get these things.
I get it back. And it was like it was a perk. I mean, it was a perk of like, okay, I see why people come to Google.
Yeah.
Because not only are they going to provide, and you get to work for, Google, it is like, okay, they take care of their employees. Like I remember one time somebody was like, yeah, I'll be back. I want to go take a nap. And I was like, a nap?
Oh, my God.
They had a nap pod. I was like, there's no way I could sit
Doug, you
here.
were the king of naps. So tell me you took advantage of that.
I didn't, because here I am, a contractor.
True.
And I'm just like, I can't afford to take a nap. You
gotta work.
I gotta work.
You were never a walk-on. I know what the contractor life feels like.
That's what it felt like. Because even with that, like full-time employees, like I was there around Christmas time, and they were like, all right, all FTs, you're done for today. Full-time employees, you're done. There's a party bus outside. Everybody get on. Contractors, y'all can just hang around.
Keep working.
And I'm just like, dang, this is like, this is awful.
That's how I felt, man. You always go eat meals and dinner after practice, and I had to go to like Little Caesars.
And we did feel bad. That was one thing I tell people: if you ever walk on, you better love the sport, because it is not for the weak. Yeah, like it's definitely not for the weak. You basically for a year and a half, 2 years,
big heavy ankle braces.
You're carrying around these dummies for no reason, getting blocked by first team, getting thrown out the way. Like it is not for the weak. So it definitely, I always look at walk, and I'm like, I never like if somebody's like, I'm walk, good for you.
Yeah,
like I'm like, good for you, because at the same time, you don't get to work.
Yeah, you're
basically a full-time football player, a full-time person on that sport, but you don't get everything that they get.
Yeah,
but it's like, hey, you over here.
I can't complain though, man. No. My life as a walk-on wasn't too terrible, because I got the benefit to get some playing time, and that kind of gave me I got to get my ankles taped during games when everyone else had to wear the heavy brace. So like I'm not complaining about it. It was a lifestyle that I didn't mind, man.
And it paid off for you, because I mean, at the end of the day, you love the sport.
Yeah,
so I think for you love the sport. And you knew that, hey, I know what I need, what's going to take. Yeah. And now this day, you can say I was there.
Well, I don't want to keep talking about me. Let's pivot away from me again.
Yeah.
But let's. So you work for Google, you work for Google, and then keep going, man.
So back at Google. So then after that, it kind of was a wake up call. I was just like, I don't like this lifestyle. So like, I think in this generation, it's not the generation of, hey, you get a job, you work 30 years. Our parents like that.
We're not that way.
It's not that way. If I don't like it, I'm going to find something that's better. And, I think the last straw was our insurance. So when you're a contractor, insurance is super expensive. And what people don't know is like, and especially when you have to, it's like me and my spouse, like by myself, it was like $160. I added my spouse. It was $700 a month.
So I have my own business. Mine's $1,300 a month.
Oh my God.
I got kids though, right?
Okay.
So it's $1,300 or so. Yeah. So
and you're doing well for yourself. But for me, it was just like, no. At that time, I was like, I can't be spending $10,000, and only thing I go to the doctor for is maybe a flu shot. I don't even, like there's no reason for me to be spending this much. So with that, I ended up getting an email from Amazon. They had a full-time position. And at the time, I actually said no the first time. I got it from a recruiter, internal recruiter. And I said no, but then I went again. My wife has always stepped up and like helped guide me through my career. So it was just like, I told her, I was like, yeah, got an email from Amazon. I said no. She said, what? Like this isn't a Smoes Joe. This is Amazon.
Yeah.
Like I can understand if it was smaller than Google, but it's the same.
Yeah. And
she's like, at least entertain it. It's full time. So I was like, sure. I was like, okay. So I wrote back, ended up crushing the first interview.
You picked up your interview skills a little bit. You figured that out.
Yes. Yeah. So then they bring you on site back then. I mean, pre-COVID, bring you on site. I know you didn't really get to experience it, but like the experience was like somebody taking an official visit at their football.
Don't rub it in.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
playing.
I'm sorry. But it's definitely like bringing it.
Yeah.
So they gave me a flight. It was like, if you never like flew Alaskan, it's like a great flight to take, great air flight to take. Yeah. So get there, they put me in this prestigious hotel. It's one of the best hotels in the city. I'm overlooking the public market in Seattle, so you see all the water. Man. Beautiful. They have a rooftop bar that they went to. They was like, get whatever you want upstairs. It's expensive. You can send all your expenses in. We're going to keep you here for 2 days. Just enjoy yourself. So I get in.
Just gave you a vacation.
Just basically gave me a vacation. But I had to interview one day. So it's just like, I'm sitting there doing that. And it's just like, this is like a true official visit.
Man.
And so I go interview. Afterwards, they was just like, all right, well, we'll catch up with you. So then here I have the rest of the day. Luckily at the time, my teammate, Maurice Mitchell, who got me on at Tech Systems, he ended up leaving and going to Microsoft. Well, he moved to Seattle to be at Microsoft. So like I hit him up and he comes down, we hang out, we go to our rooftop, we go down, we eat like best food.
Lobster.
I was like, it's on me, whatever you want. Like I'm sitting there like I'm like a king, like I got this. So that happens. End up coming back. And then I get a phone call like, hey, Doug, we want to make an offer. We want to bring you. So then next thing you know, here I am working for Microsoft. I mean, I said for Amazon, the largest supplier basically in the world. And even with that, like, a perk for them, they send you up to Seattle. I got the travel. They give you a card basically with Amazon on it. It's like to swipe this whenever you need it, things like that. So it was just like, this is real. This is what it's like. From an ego standpoint, that's kind of what I needed. It was one of those things like, like for you, like with real estate, this was one like, when I tell people I work for Amazon, now don't get me wrong, I have to be like, not in a fulfillment center.
Yeah.
I work for corporate. Like you gotta kind of separate like, oh, that's cool.
For sure.
And on top of that, to tell people like, hey, I find people that made Alexa, or hey, I find people who is building Amazon Prime, like just throwing out, and they're just like, really? Like, that is exciting. That makes me feel good. That keeps my joy of like, hey, this is what I'm working for. So,
which is interesting. You bring up ego a lot. Cause I mean, like if someone said, hey, Doug Beaumont got a big ego, I'd be like, absolutely not. Like that's never go. But it's not really, an outside ego that you portray, but it is tough to have some of these things in your life and then not have them anymore. So it's interesting, man. I'm happy you explained, your path and now what you do, and also the benefits of what you do and why it kind of helps fill your void. Because if someone's listening, I never would have, because I did the kind of in my mind the route of like Nike or Adidas. I was like, I'd love to go work for them. It's kind of sports. My thoughts was like, I'll be like an apparel tester, like I'm just I get to have all the free gear. Like what? There's not even a job. Like, I made up my own job and was like gonna email them like, hey, can I do this? But someone listening that might not even think, who's a current or former player, like, oh man, like if I can do these things, I can work for a big time company because I used to play for a big time school or a big time team, or you had that. All of that. So I hope, man, that people hear this and reach out to you, me, reach out to their network and, hey, do you know anybody that works for these types of companies? I'd love to kind of get my foot in the door. So hearing this podcast could be huge for a lot of people.
And I would tell people like, hey, connect with me, talk to me, because I would even give you the path to get there. Because I think, like you brought up, it's kind of like my accolades at this point. Like I said, I mean, back then, I was Mr. Football. I go to U of L. I was one of the starters as a sophomore. I was able to lead the passing there. And now here I am. Yeah, I'm in a sense bouncing around, but it's like, who can say they work for probably 4 of the top 5 companies in the world? You know what I mean? And that's like an accolade to me. But it's like, what is your accolade? Like, even see for yourself. I bet you, every time you sell a house, it's like, yeah, there's another accolade. There goes my trophy. Like, it's like trophies on a wall. And that's kind of, I feel like with athletes, you need that. So whatever like career you go into, it's like, what is your trophy? Or what will make you feel accomplished? And I think for me, that's what it was. And then like even being there, the names of the companies are kind of like my trophies or accolades in a sense. But what I'm doing for people as well is something that I thrive off of
that
too.
Helps fill
you know what I mean? It makes you like, I just changed that person's life. Like even right now working at, we call it Meta now, formerly known as Facebook. Right now I am focused on like interns. So like I'm changing, it's people with PhD. So very smart people from Carnegie Mellon, Stanford, all the top schools. And even with that, though, I'm changing a kid's life because I'm bringing it like, hey, you want to come work And if people don't know what's going on right now, they're building out the virtual reality. It's going to be like, it's metaverse, as you want to say. Like, in my eyes, it might be the next big thing out there. And, I can say, hey, I'm finding those people that are building it 5 to 10 years from now. So, like, when you're at home on your Oculus or whatever it might be, your VR, and you're just like, dang, Doug helped build this, and this looks like this. That's what I take pride in. And it's from a bigger standpoint, not just in Louisville, but now I can say that's for the world. You know what I mean?
Man. Well, man, I appreciate you sharing your story on all of that. I guess I think it's going to help a lot of people, hearing all that. But let's pivot real quickly back to the sports world. We're going to wrap up here. So for our audience to get, we don't want to go too long and bore people, which your story is not boring by any means. But, okay, I always like to go over a little fun thing at the end or so at some point in the podcast. Your favorite play or game of your career? It can be a couple here and there, but, what inside scoop, inside story do you think that fans or even people just listening would like to hear?
Yeah, I think number one off the bat, everybody knows like it took me forever to get into the end zone. And it wasn't even the fact that it wasn't getting in the end zone. It was like, hey, it stayed. Like I remember my junior year, I scored, but it got called back for a holding. And it was just like, I was just like, this is unbelievable.
I'm never going to make it.
I'm never going to make it. Like, I think I cried after that game. I was like, I finally touched it. Y'all took it away. So with the first time, just being able to say I crossed the end zone, I think it was just like for the whole stadium. Everyone knew.
Everyone
knew. Was like, is that 27? And it crossed it, and it just erupted and everything.
It's funny because when you cross the goal line, it was quite the lame celebration.
Oh, it was awful.
But it was also the right celebration. It was just like you went through and like you didn't do anything. You just threw your arms out and you were like, I'm here.
I'm here. It was like I had to look down. I was like, am I past the white?
I did it.
I did it. And it's like I'm looking at the stands. They're all like, and it's pretty cool because somebody snapped a picture of it, and you just see the fans just staring, and everybody's up on their feet.
It is a cool picture.
And it's just like, it's almost like I arrived, I made it.
Yeah.
And I know afterwards, Coach Strong actually got mad at me. He was like, why did you kick the ball or punt it? I would have took the penalty. I didn't care. You scored. And everybody ran on the field and everything, and then they played Teach Me How to Dougie. So that was definitely
That's what I meant by I think it was lame.
Yes.
Because, even Coach Strong was like, Doug, I don't care if you kick the ball in the stands, get a penalty. You deserve it.
He said you deserve it. So I'm glad I didn't because the equipment manager actually, Mike Karosky, kept the ball, wrapped it, put like white and brown on it, and then put the first touchdown in the Eastern Kentucky. So I'm glad I didn't boot it. I probably wouldn't have got Tom Brady money. I ain't gonna give out Bitcoin or anything, but I would have needed that back.
Yeah, that's right. So how many catches did you have? Do you know how many catches you had? So to the listeners that don't maybe that followed your career, forgot or whatever, how many catches do you think you had before? That's why it's such a big deal. You finally scored a touchdown.
107.
107 catches at the University of Louisville before finally. What's even funnier is that I got in the end zone before you did.
You did?
Yeah. No, it was only a 2-point conversion, but I had more points.
I think I was low-key mad. I was like, did Scotty just really score before? I was like, oh, yeah. No, you ain't scoring. Man, whatever.
Because our receiver coach, Ron Dugans made sure you knew about it.
Yes.
He was like, Doug, Scotty will show you how to get in the paint. Here's how you get in the paint. He got the paint last year or whatever. You didn't been in the paint yet because we didn't have him as the coach when I scored. But when Ron got there, he was like, hey, I know this guy scored. He's been in the paint. You got to talk to Scott. But oh man, no. Okay, one last thing to wrap up. We always wrap up the podcast this way. Is a word of advice for a current athlete. What can a current athlete do to help position themselves, in a position of having success once the sports world is over?
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things like, hey, go as long as you can. If you feel like, hey, you want to make the league, do it because you never want the regrets.
Yep.
But, one thing that I would look back on, as I talked about earlier, is the networking piece. Take full advantage, especially with NIL now. Take full advantage of that. Talk to different people, understand what they're doing, continue to build those relationships, whether it's even in Louisville or in your hometown. Speak with people, get meetings, have coffee chats, whatever it is. Just ask what you're doing. The other piece is like what I would say is, use the power of social media and your other networks. One of the things that I'm big on now is LinkedIn. You can go on LinkedIn and you can look up alumni. Like you can see where your alumni is working. I tell people, hey, reach out to those alumni. Let them know who you are. Everybody likes to talk to a sports athlete. Everybody. It don't matter. Like even if somebody reached out to me and was like, hey, I played in blah, blah, or I play, I would love for a volleyball player to reach out to me and say, hey, I recently was a part of this is awesome. Let's connect.
Yeah.
Like that's an opportunity there for you to do that and this continue to build those relationships. Because at the end of the day, yeah, sports is there, but even with the best players, they're not there. Not everybody's a Tom Brady. Not everybody's a LeBron. You have to prepare yourself for the next chapter of your life. And these are opportunities to do that, the stepping stones there. And then, like I said, the other piece is understand, what will motivate you or what will get you your trophies.
Yeah.
Whether it's through, recruiting like myself or talent acquisition where I can be strategic, or if it's through coaching and you know that it's a grind, but you just enjoy just being around individuals and impacting, other players and young people, or if it's through real estate. I mean, it's allowing you to, have that bond with people and sell something and make money from it. I mean, figure out what motivates you. And then with that, write it down. I think that's the other piece is writing it down, make it, I'm a visualizer. So if I see it, I want to conquer it. And that's something I think a lot of athletes are. They want to see. That's why we have slogans on the wall. That's why we look up at, hey, the countdowns, all that, because you want to see what you're going towards. So if you write it down, I think you will get there and you will succeed. And just know everybody goes through speed bumps. And don't be afraid that when you are at your lowest times, reach out and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Because that's the hardest thing. A lot of people keep it inside and then they do something that they regret. So reach out, talk to somebody. I promise you, there are people out there that will call you, talk to you, or meet with you to help you out. And you have the resources, especially being at a D1 college.
Agree. Yeah, man. Man, good advice. Great story. Doug, I appreciate you being out here, man. We know each other well, but hearing some of these stories that I didn't know, it's quite amazing for me to even hear. So I want to thank you to the listeners for tuning in and everything here. Until next time on Suited Up. I'd like to thank all of you listeners for tuning in. Please click the subscribe button to continue hearing the inside stories of your favorite athletes. And I always love feedback. So leave a review or a comment to let us know what you're thinking about the show. Once again, thank you all for listening. Until next time, I'm Scott Radcliff, your host of Suited Up.